Ugochi's mother thought Ugochi was with Ise when she didn't return home by late noon. So her mother went to Ise's house, but he had also been wondering where Ugochi was. By evening, when Ugochi still hadn't returned, Ise and her mother became worried. Ise went in search of her and found her water pot at the stream. This was strange to Ise because Ugochi never went anywhere without informing him. When he returned with the pot, Ugochi's mother wept profusely as she believed that her daughter had been kidnapped. Ise was greatly troubled and he organized a search party for her. The village youths and warriors combed every part of the village. They went into the deep forests around the stream where Ugochi's water pot was found. Ada was with them, wailing as she called out Ugochi's name. Ise kept reassuring her that Ugochi would be found. Suddenly, a sharp cry filled the air. "My brothers! Over here!" someone screamed. Excitement filled the air as Ise and the others hurried in the direction of the voice. When Ise got there, and saw the youths standing with their heads bowed, fear gripped his heart. Ise's heart squeezed when he saw some clothes on the ground. He recognized them immediately. They were Ugochi's clothes. He fell on his knees as he reached for the clothes. "Brothers, let's not lose hope," Ise said, "spread out. We'll continue the search." The men continued to look for Ugochi until late into the night. Ada, who had been silent since Ugochi's clothes were found, touched Ise's arm. "Ise, we need to return to the village. We can continue the search tomorrow." "No," Ise said, "we have to keep searching for her. Look around you, it's dark. Our people are tired and hungry. They can barely see in the dark. Please call off the search. We'll continue by morning." Ise sighed, and with a heavy heart, he told everyone to gather around. He thanked them and told them the search would continue by morning. Ise couldn't sleep that night. He cried and prayed to the gods of the land to protect Ugochi wherever she may be. By morning, the search continued. The search party went as far as the neighboring villages, but no one had seen Ugochi or heard of a kidnapping. On the third day, the men were convinced that Ugochi had been killed by ritualists or kidnapped. Ise made an announcement and offered to pay whoever had an information about Ugochi. The town crier also went around the village, announcing that everyone should be on the lookout for anyone or anything that looked suspicious. A day after the announcement was made, the villagers flooded Ise's father's compound, all claiming to have an information about Ugochi. They all had wild tales to tell. They said Ugochi eloped with another man, while some swore that she kidnapped herself. Ise was so angry at this people that he went into his room, got hold of a mache, and chased them away. Ugochi's eyes drifted open and she found herself in an abandoned hut in the forest. She had no idea how she had gotten there. Ugochi staggered to her feet and fell. She tried to stand up again, and this time she didn't fall. Ugochi came out of the hut and looked around her, trying to remember how she got there. She saw a clear path and followed it. As she walked along the path, she could smell every plant and tree in the forest. She could also see clearly even though it was dusk. She continued to walk through the path, tired and hungry. When she finally saw the stream she used to fetch water, her heart filled with joy. She rushed home and tried to open the wooden gate in front of her house, but her hands kept sliding off it. "Mama, please let me in," she cried. She kept shouting until she saw her mother approaching the gate. She knew her mother would be angry at her, but she did not know how long she had been away. She thought she had been away for a few hours. Her mother opened the gate and waved a hand at her. "Shoo! Shoo! Go away!" she said. "Mama, I am sorry. Let me in," Ugochi cried. Her mother slammed the gate in her face. So she went to Ise's house. She ran to him and called out his name, Ise. Ise reached for a stone and threw it at her. Ise had never treated her this way, and she did not understand why he would do so now. She ran away with tears in her eyes. Ugochi headed for Ada's house, but before she reached there, the sky rumbled and it began to rain. Ugochi ran under the shade of a tree, and out of exhaustion, she fell asleep. In the morning, she headed home, but as she greeted people on her way, no one responded. Ugochi didn't know what happened to her. She was tired and hungry. She went home, but the gate was locked from the inside. She didn't want to go to Ease, so she went to the stream to have a bath. When she got to the stream, she bent over to scoop some water and she saw the reflection of a dog on the water. She screamed out and turned around, but there was no dog behind her. She bent over again and she saw the reflection of a dog. Then she looked at her body and began to scream. She screamed and screamed, but the sound came out as a bark. "What happened to me? Who did this to me?" she asked over and over. She finally stopped screaming and tried to remember the previous day's events. It took a few minutes before thoughts of the previous day flooded her mind. She was at the stream with Ada, that was all she remembered. Ada was like a sister to her, she was certain she wouldn't do this to her. She headed back to Isa's place because she didn't know what to do. As she neared the house, she saw Ada going into Isa's compound with a basket of food. Ugochi stopped to think for a moment. Ada was the last person she was with, and now she had become a dog. Ada's father was a powerful Idibio, which means that she had access to charms and potions that many don't. Ugochi began to cry. She couldn't believe that Ada, whom she took as a sister, could do this to her. Why, she wondered, and then it dawned on her. It was because of Ease. Ease was allergic to dogs, just the mere sight of them makes him sneeze. With a broken heart, Ugochi returned to the stream and slept under a tree until a new dawn. By morning, Ease and the other young men set out to search for Ugochi. She heard them yelling her name and tears filled her eyes. Once again, Ada was by Ease's side, crying uncontrollable. Ease tried to console her, but she was inconsolable. On the third day the men grew weary and wanted to call off the search. Ease thanked the men for their help, but for a whole week, he went into the deepest part of the forests alone and even to the neighboring villages, but no one had seen a girl who matched Ugochi's description. Exhausted and dejected, Ease made his way back home. He stopped by the stream to drink some water and he heard a sound. Ease followed the sound and found a dog lying under a tree. Even though he was allergic to dogs and tired, he couldn't walk away. The dog seemed to be ill and needed help. The dog went to him and Ease rubbed its head. The dog looked up at him with sad eyes and tears trickled down the side of its face. Ease picked up the dog and headed home. When he got home, he gave the dog some food, water, and prepared a bed for it near his own. He kept checking up on the dog all through the night. In the morning, he found the dog sleeping beside him and he realized that he hadn't sneezed not even once since he saw the dog. He thought this was strange as he always sneezed whenever a dog was nearby. Later that day, Ada came to visit him with a basket of food. When the dog saw her, it started to bark and chased Ada away. Ease picked up the dog and said Ada was a friend and that the dog should be nice when next Ada came over. When Ada got home, she told her father how a dog chased her out of Ease's house and he told her that the dog was her friend Ugochi. Her father told her that as long as Ugochi was in their lives, even in her present state, Ease would never love her. This made Ada so angry that she devised a plan that would enable her to get rid of Ugochi forever. She went to Ease and told him that she heard a rumor that he would soon be crowned king. Ease told her that he no longer had interest in becoming the king. Ada offered to marry Ease so he wouldn't lose the throne. But he turned her down, so she went to his father and made her proposal known to him. Ease's father began to pressure him to marry Ada so the crown wouldn't go to another family. After a while, Ease agreed to marry Ada. On their wedding night, Ease left Ada in her hut and spent the night in his own hut. As time went on, King Ease began to spend more time with the dog, Ugochi, than he did with his queen, Ada. This made the queen angrier and she decided that it was time to put her plan into action. She got King Ease drunk one night and made him promise her that he would banish all the dogs in the land. The next morning, before King Ease woke up, Queen Ada had sent the town crier to make the announcement. The villagers were given 24 hours to get rid of their dogs. King Ease was upset when the villagers flooded his palace to make a complaint, but the queen reminded him that he gave her his word. King Ease had no choice than to do what the queen wanted. So, the palace guards went around the village and chased all the dogs out of the village. The queen told the king that he had to get rid of his own dog too, and since all the dogs in the village had been chased away, the king had no choice than to also get rid of his dog that had become a cherished companion. King Ys woke up one morning, stripped off his royal attire and wore one of his old clothes. He and the dog walked out of the village. They walked for miles until they could see a neighboring village ahead. King Ys found a spot and built a shelter for the dog. He promised the dog that he would visit often, and so every 3 days he found an excuse to leave the palace and went to see the dog. They would play together until dusk, when he would return to the palace. Queen Ada was still unhappy because she knew that the king was secretly visiting the dog. She sent 2 palace guards on a secret mission to find the dog and get rid of it for good. One evening, King Ys returned to the palace unknown to him that Ugochi had followed him back to the village. Ugochi went to Ada's father's house to plead with him to transform her back to a human. When she got there, she overheard Ada and her father plotting to poison the king's food because Ada was pregnant for her secret lover who was a guard in the palace. The king only ate breakfast, so they planned to poison his food the next morning. Ugochi ran away before they could see her. She ran to the palace, barking loudly to get King Ys's attention. But he was furious when he saw the dog. He didn't want anyone to know that he had been visiting it secretly, so he told his guards to chase the dog away. The dog became aggressive and kept barking, but it was no match for the guards. When Ugochi returned to the shelter, she prayed to her creator. She begged him to give her the power to communicate with Ys and expose Ada's plans to him. She kept praying until the sky rumbled and she heard a voice from above saying, "My child, you cannot communicate with Ys because he is a human and you are in the form of a dog." Ugochi made a bargain. In exchange for her life, she would be able to communicate with Ys and save his life. Later that night, Ys came to see Ugochi and she said, "Ys, it's me, Ugochi." Ys was afraid and tried to run away, but she pleaded with him not to. Ugochi told him Ada would poison his food in the morning and he shouldn't eat it. Now that Ys knew his beloved dog was his missing fiancée, he took her back to the palace and hid her in one of the rooms. In the morning, when Ada served his food, King Ys asked her to sit beside him so they could eat together, but she said she wasn't hungry. So the king asked the guards to bring Ada's father and the villagers to the palace. When they arrived, King Ys asked Queen Ada to eat the food she made for him, but she refused to. Then the king went in and brought out the dog. King Ys told everyone that the dog was the missing Ugochi, but they all thought he had lost his mind. Queen Ada began to laugh and she told everyone that the king had gone crazy. So the king asked the dog to repeat what it told him, and to everyone's surprise, the dog began to talk. Queen Ada tried to escape, but the villagers grabbed her and took off her crown. She was asked to confess her sins and she told them what she did. Ada's father pleaded for the king's forgiveness as he was greatly ashamed of himself. The king asked Ada's father to transform Ugochi back to her human form, but he couldn't do it. Queen Ada and her father were banished from the land and sent away from the village. They left the village with their heads bowed in shame. Suddenly, the dog slumped. The king carried it back to his room. When they were alone, Ugochi told him about the bargain and King Ys wept bitterly. He stayed by her side until they both drifted off to sleep. When he woke up and didn't see the dog, he thought it had died. King Ys bowed his head and wept. Then the door opened and someone held his hand. He looked up and saw Ugochi, regally dressed. She had transformed back to her human form. Even though Ugochi bargained with her life, the universe had mercy on her, and instead of her losing her life, she was transformed to her human form. King Ys and Ugochi got married and lived happily for many, many years.